Okay, so let's review the steps to calculate break-even, all right? What were they? Number one, what did we have to do? Classify them as fixed or variable, right? F or V. Then we had to calculate the variable as a percent of what? Sales. Then we had to determine the contribution margin percentage, which was saying 100% minus the variable cost percent, right? And then what we did is we divided the fixed cost by that number. So the formula we'd use, if you're a formula person, to calculate break-even was the fixed cost divided by the contribution margin percentage. And what I had said earlier was the most important number as it relates to this whole break-even concept is what? The most important number is what? The contribution margin percentage, right? Being able to identify it and track it and see how it changes. All right, now, when we worked through our practice case study, we calculated this, and what was our variable cost percentage? You remember? It was 496 divided by 620, 80%, right? 80%. So what that means, when sales are $1, variable costs are 80 cents, and what's left? 20 cents. So in this business, when fixed costs go up $1, when fixed costs go up $1, what do I need in sales to cover it? In my little pen company example, it was around $250, wasn't it? Well, this one is what? Dividing by 0.2 is the same as multiplying by what? 5. So what this says is in our company here, our practice company, from say year 1, every dollar that fixed costs creep up, either in big chunks or those little bitty things, and sometimes it's the little bitty things that are more insidious, isn't it? What I've always called the creepers, those things that you don't pay any attention to and they just keep going up and up and up, supplies and stuff like that. For every dollar that fixed cost goes up, he's got to get what in sales? $5 to cover that. Good to know. Again, we said, as Randy pointed out, this gives him at least some sort of, it may not be a formal, but it's an informal yardstick, isn't it? Of how to evaluate whether I want those costs or not. All right, now let's take a look at the answers that you put together for the case study. This was our data to work with, isn't it? Our variable costs now, we're a couple of years later. Variable costs have gone up. Fixed costs have gone up. Surprise? Not a surprise at all. Fixed costs and variable costs always go up, don't they? So what do we do in number 1? Let's just go through and talk about these. What do we do in number 1? We calculated the variable cost percentage. Somebody help me with the numbers. 904 680 divided by 1,077,000. How much? What percentage? 84%. 84%. What's happened in 2 years? Not only have the costs gone up, but what else has happened? What's happened to they've gone up in dollars, but they've also gone up as a percentage. In the context of that cup picture that we're going to continue to work with, it means we've got what? Less trickling down out of every sales dollar, isn't that right? Less trickling down. When we have sales of $1, we've got variable costs of 84 cents. So what's left? 16. So my contribution margin percentage is 16%, down from what 2 years earlier? 20. So he's got he's got less trickling down to cover a bigger number. Is that right? And how do we calculate the break-even? We took his fixed costs of 151,820, divided it by the 16 cents, and said our break-even is 948,875. Now, what's the answer again if somebody says, hey, how could that be right? His sales are actually at 1,077,000. What do we know? He's making a profit. Once again, it's okay for your sales to be greater than your break-even, right? We'd like that. $948,875, and if he does $948,876, how much will he make? 16 cents. 77? Now he's cooking, right? Okay. That's our answer to the break-even question. Now, what are we going to do? Now, what are we going to do with the cost structure? In question number 2, what was question number 2?
The rent goes up.
What additional sales are needed if the rent increases $2,000 a month? What additional annual sales? And in your question on your worksheet, what was the key word?
Additional.
Additional. And how did you notice that? It was bold, underlined, in italics, right? We figured 3 shots at it and hopefully we'd get it. What additional sales? Okay, now all we need to do to calculate that, well, what did you do? Somebody talk me through what you did. There's a couple of ways to get at this, isn't there? So what did somebody do?
Multiply 2,000 by...
You multiplied 2,000 by 12 to get 24,000, isn't that right? To get 24,000 for the year, because we said annual, then what'd you do? Somebody, and you actually just took and said, what we're fundamentally doing here is what? In the context of the picture, what are we doing? We're taking that fixed cost cup and making it what? Bigger. We're making the fixed cost cup bigger. And what you did, Antonio, is you just added, you said, let's just look at the additional part. And it was $24,000. You divided the 16 cents and said, how much will it cost to fill that, what will it take to fill that additional volume, right? And what answer did you get?
150.
150,000. Who did it a different way? And how'd you do it, Tim?
Added the 24,000 to the existing fixed costs.
He added the 24,000 to the 151,820 and got 175,820. Still divided by the 16.
Right.
Got 1,098,875, right? Is that right?
Subtracted.
And then that's the new break even with the new fixed cost. So then you went up and subtracted off the old break even with the old fixed cost. And the difference will give you the amount of sales needed to cover the additional fixed costs. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Did I confuse myself? No, I didn't. Okay, that's right. Now, there's a couple of places. That's the long way. It is not the wrong way, but it is the long way. Antonio, you did it the short way, right? The incremental way. Just look at the additional costs. And what this says in words is very simple. It says when fixed costs go up $24,000, in this business with this cost structure, sales got to go up what? 150,000. Now, let's just work it back to $1, huh? So when fixed costs go up $1, what do sales have to go up? 150,000 over 24,000 is equal to X over 1. Do you remember proportions from 6th grade? Do you remember 6th grade? I don't remember it either time, so there. So 150 over 24 is equal to X over 1. Solve for X. What's X over 1? This is not a trick question. Any of you math folks? Your mother was a math teacher. X, right? Anything over 1 is whatever it is. 150,000 over 24,000. Let's get rid of the zeros. 150 over 24 is equal to X, which is equal to, somebody? Now you should, what? 6 1/4. What does this say in words about our company 2 years later? Now for every $1 of fixed cost increase, he needs how much in sales? 66. He's got to work harder than he did 2 years ago to cover that fixed cost. It takes more sales than it did before. What's happened to his operating efficiency? It's clearly gone down. Those of you who are advisors to business would maybe hear it this way. I don't know what's going on, man. I'm working longer and I'm working harder and I'm getting behind her. And almost always, I'm bigger, but almost always, in my experience, it relates to something around this cost structure here, and we haven't taken a look at it. Your mission the first thing I want you to do after this course is over, and after you go back to your own business and you get your balance sheet and your P&L, you're still going to be more familiar with the P&L, even though you'll be more familiar with the balance sheet by the time we get done. I want you to take the P&L and do what? First, identify FV, all the way down. Figure it out. I do have to tell you, a few years back, I had sometimes you have to be careful when you're presenting because people take you flat out literally. I had a person call me. They said, that break-even thing, I went home and did it just like you told me, and it didn't work. I went, oh my gosh, it didn't work? They said, no, it didn't work. What are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, what'd you do? And they said, well, that's the heck of it. I did exactly what you said. I went home, I took my P&L, my income statement, I went FV, FV, and I said, they don't alternate. And they said, no, you said FV, FV. And my first thought was, if you own a gun, sell it. But at any rate, so F or V. F or V all the way down. Then divide the V by your sales, and you will know what? Your variable cost percentage, subtract it from 100, and you will know what? Your contribution margin, and then all of the ways we can use this are possible. If you don't know your contribution margin, you can't really do anything. Now, I recognize that most of us are not in business to break even. We'd like to make what? A profit. So question number 3 says, let's pick a profit. How much was it? $50,000. So I want a profit of $50,000. Now, how much is trickling down now? His fixed costs are still what? Fixed costs are 151,820, right? And his variable cost percentage is what? 84. So if I start with $1, how much falls into the cup? 84 cents. How much trickles down? 16 cents. The cup is how big? 151,820. And how much profit do I want? 50. So what'd you do? There's at least 3 ways. I knew of 2 ways, and while we were working through the case study, I actually learned of a 3rd way. I learned the way they do it in the rental business. So there's at least a couple of ways. Here's what I'm guessing at least some of you did. You took the 50,000, you divided it by 16 cents, and you got what? 312,500. Agreed?
Yes.
Now, if you left it there, you got halfway. Isn't that right? What was the key word in that sentence, in the question? What total sales are required? If you gave me 312,500, you gave me the right answer to the wrong question. That would have been what additional sales are needed, yes? And we wanted what total sales are needed. So what do we have to do? In order to make a profit, you first got to get to break even, 948,875. So you got 1,261,375. Yeah? That's cool. Who did it a different way? Anybody?
Yeah, we added the 50,000 onto the 151.
151,820. You added the 50,000. In other words, you treated the profit as a cost because he targeted it. Now we've got to have enough trickle down to fill not 1 cup, but what? 2 cups. And the 2 cups together are 201,820, aren't they? And when you divide that by the 16 cents, you got 1,261,375. Both. And there are many paths to the right answer. As long as you see the picture, and the best way to see the picture is to use the roadmap, isn't it? Now, here's what I'd like you to do. You've got the cups? Is that right? Okay, I'm going to give you a mission. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to put more profit in the cup. You with me on this? Your mission is to put more profit in the cup. So, I can think of at least 4 ways to do that. Using your cups and working with your partner or with your facilitator. Let's list at least 4 ways to put more profit in the cup. Because we're really not in business to break even. We call the section break even, but it's really a profit planning tool, isn't it? It's really a profit planning tool. So let's list at least 4 ways to put more profit in the cup, looking at the picture. In the picture, we've got 2 things. We've got cups and flows, don't we? We've got the arrows flowing down, and we've got the cups. So what I'd like you to do is list at least 4 things that we can do to put more profit in the cup. Now think for a minute, and then somebody give me 1. Actually, if you can think of it, you don't have to wait a minute. Simon, what do you got?
Reduce variable costs.
Okay, let's do this. I agree with you. Let's put some order to this so I can package your thinking. Sales minus cost equals profit. Isn't that right? I mean, in its most basic level, sales minus cost equals profit. Let's start with the sales or the revenue side first. What are the things I can do to drive up the revenue? I can think of 2 things. One of them is sell more units, right? In other words, just turn up the volume in the shower and run more water through these cups, huh? Just run more water through these cups. Boom, sell more units. And that used to work really good in the good old days. What's the problem today? We have so many maturing industries that in many businesses, in order to sell more units, the concern is I have to what? Drop my price. So that's one, though. If you can do it, sell more units. Maybe you figure out a way to add a dimension to the product you already have, so it's a slightly different product. One of the things that's really interesting to notice when we start thinking about using this as a profit tool, this section right here is where the world of finance, as we're talking now, and the world of marketing intersect, isn't it? This is where marketing and finance intersect together. So we need to get a marketing person and a finance person at the same table to speak to one another. Oftentimes that doesn't happen, does it? So if we can sell more units, and what was it, Tim, you said what?
Increase price.
Raise the price. Raise the price. Okay. And what's the pushback? If I raise the price,
Sell fewer units.
I'll sell fewer units. I might even lose customers. Everyone is what? Cold. Chicken. Everyone is chicken to raise the price. But if we could calculate for a given price increase how much volume we could actually lose and still make money, would that be a helpful tool? Then we'd kind of know, we could put some numbers, we could measure the paranoia, because I will say it's a paranoia. If I raise my price, oh my gosh, they'll go away. Now, I've looked at businesses and we've seen businesses where every time they made a sale, they had their costs set so they were losing money. In that case, having business go away would be desirable. If you sell more and you're losing money, that was my airplane example, but it's not only in the airline industry. So, sell more units, raise your price. Now let's go to the cost side. And both of those in the context of our cups. What do? Both of those in the context of our cups tend to do what? Sell more units will increase the trickle down, will it not? Same percentage, but it increases the number of units trickling down, so the dollars increase. Raise the price. That increases the amount of each trickle, doesn't it? Actually, it would be nice to do both, but you can't always do that. Third thing, what was it?
Lower fixed.
Decrease the variable costs. Buy better. And how do you buy better? Source a new supplier, ask for a discount. We've talked a number of those things. Buy better. It's not just buy more, get a better price because of volume. That's a possibility too, if you need the more. If you don't need the more and you buy more to get a better price, you're going to end up with inventory that ties up cash, aren't you? But increase the variable cost, or decrease the variable cost. That will also have the effect of increasing the trickle down, won't it? And what's the last thing? Decrease the fixed costs. That has nothing to do with the trickle down, does it? What effectively does that have to do with?
Changes the mix between the cup and how much goes.
Making the fixed cost cup what? Smaller. Littler. It will fill faster if it's smaller. Retailers have learned that, haven't they? Make the cup smaller, keep the same price, and just give you less. That's effectively a way of doing what? And that's sort of a backdoor way of increasing the price, isn't it? But it works. It's not the in-your-face version. Now, which of those four that we've just listed, and I don't know any others, by the way, which of those four would you like to be able to do in a business? All four. Well, you're not greedy. You just want all four. Dear Santa, I want it all. And every once in a while, you find an economy, a market, a place you can do that. You can do all four of those, and then what happens? You make a boatload of money, don't you? And then everyone else figures it out, and what do? They decide they're going to copy you, and then what was going like this all of a sudden flattens out and down. What happens if you can't, so you enjoy it while you can and don't tell nobody nothing, right? Continue to drive the 91 Toyota so that people don't know you're making a lot of money and they won't get in. On the other hand, what do you know if you look at all four of those and you can't do any of them? Then you have a problem. If you can't do any of them, but you're making money, what do you know? You can't make any more. If you can't do any of those four and you're losing money, what do you know? You're in trouble. You need to stop doing this. Get out of the business, as we said earlier, sell it to somebody who can't do the calculation, don't share that with them. If we can't change the cost structure in these four areas, and as we look at how companies put these four areas together, doesn't that also really define their marketing strategy? How they put these together? Some people are the high price, high cost model. Some people are the low price, low cost model. Either way, what we'll find out is they've got to have a contribution margin. They've got to have a contribution margin. If they don't have a contribution margin, it doesn't matter. Is it possible to be the low price, high cost? High service. That's that marketing triad that you can usually pick 2 out of 3, isn't it? You can't do 3 out of 3 very well. That's the model, and that's what we got to know about break even and about knowing your costs. Summary. The most important number? The contribution margin, to know it. Secondly, think of profit as a fixed cost. That's the other thing I'd like you to remember. Think of profit as a fixed cost, target it, set a goal, because if you don't figure it into your strategy. Those two things are incredibly important. And the third thing, when you get back to your business or you get back to your clients, I'd like everybody to sit down, take one of those income statements and calculate what? A break even right now, a fixed or variable, and then we'll know the contribution margin. If you don't know it right now, all you need, you have the information at your fingertips to know it, don't you, in that income statement. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at one more set of case studies, except now, instead of all of our break even in this past case study was in dollars. Now we're going to do our break even in what? Units. Units. Like, give me a unit. A pen. If you sell pens. If you are a beer distributor, what's your unit?
Cases.
If you're a brewery, it's barrels. If you're a beer distributor, it's what?
Cases.
Cases of beer. If you're a hair cutting franchise, what's your unit? Heads. If you're a mortician, it's a little macabre, but what's your unit? The whole body, not just the head. Bodies. Now, think about it. Is that reasonable? Yeah, you got to think that way, don't you? You've got to think in units if we have a homogeneous unit. It's a little more dicey if we have a restaurant, because we can still do a unit. What's a unit? An average sale. You know how many people came in? You know what your total sales for a period were. Sales per person. When I say it's a little bit more dicey, what am I really saying? What does that introduce? They don't all order the same thing, and not all foods have the same cost. So then we've got a distribution of a marketing distribution, a product mix issue, which adds a little bit of a dimension to this, but we can still do that. In the home cleaning business, what's the unit? A house. A house. In the, we've already talked about accountants, what's their unit? An hour. And attorneys? A minute, right. If we can get things down to a unit, then we can evaluate this in units. So what I'd like you to do, take your case study now, the next page of your case study. We've got 3 questions which we'll address now using units. It's our same company, it's flooring, and our selling price per yard is how much? $5. Our variable cost per yard? $4.20. And our fixed costs are still what? They haven't changed. We've just now getting it down to a unit, huh? And when we get back together, we'll see if your answers square with mine and talk a little bit about units, and this will lead us into a discussion on pricing.